so very different project when a client says, I've never worked with an architect or builder before, versus a client says, I've worked with an architect and builder before. Or, you built my friend's house and they explained to me how great the design build option is with you. So all different types of clients, but I would say a lot of the clients are coming to us now saying, I really, really like this one-stop shop. I really like that I can kind of hold you accountable for design and the budget.
Well, today we have a special guest, Rosario Mannino. Welcome, Rosario.
Thanks, Brad. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. So, Rosario's owner of RS Mannino Architecture and Architects and Builders, I should say, not just architecture. So you got both. We got a little design build going on here.
Yep, having a little fun here.
So we'll get into it. I mean, you and I were able to spend some time. You came out golfing, and I know that New Jersey blood. You even told me on the golf course, you're like, I'm kind of worried about this 95-degree afternoon when we be golfing.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it was actually a beautiful day. 995. That 95 felt like 65 here.
It's a little bit different, yeah. I mean, now it's 110, so it's a little bit different in summer. But at 95, it's not too bad for us in Phoenix.
Yeah, I had a great time that day. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's fun to spend some time. And what's unique about you is there's a fair amount of architect, design, build firms out there in the market. Not as common, right? You have a lot that are built like us that are true general contractors and then true architects, true designers. Walk us through kind of the strategy behind that to doing the full turnkey.
Yeah, so honestly, it depends on the client and their comfort level, right? So ideally, we like the client to sign us up for design and build in the beginning. So a set design fee and a set construction management agreement, but that doesn't always turn out that way, and so we're pretty flexible depending on the project and the client. But ideal situation, they're signing us up for design and construction, and our negotiation is behind us, and now we're just acting on our client's behalf and on their best interest for the design and the bids on the subcontractors. And it's kind of like not very different than the other projects in a sense. Well, I would say maybe during design, we're doing some pre-construction services as well. So that's obviously different from a pure architecture firm. So we're heavily involved in the budget. Every client meeting of ours is a discussion of budget. Really, we go straight into permitting and to construction when it's a full design build in the beginning, which is nice. We can save some time there. And other times, we're just doing the design and the clients, maybe not so comfortable yet, and we'll just act as their architect. And sometimes they might want to price us out and say, okay, it's fine. We'll build up that trust, and we will send them the drawings, and we'll price it out, and they get to pick their horse, as I say. So
how does that work? I mean, when you're working through budget, which is a huge part of that pre-construction process, and you're doing the architecture, you're doing the construction, what about interior design?
Yeah, so two things. So some will work with some interior designers, and sometimes clients, say, we enjoy working with you. Can you guys do the interior design? So sometimes we'll do the interior design all the way down to the furnishings and styling. Actually, we just finished a project up that we're pretty excited about. That it's going to get published soon. That we did full architecture, interior design, furnishings, and everything. So depends on the client or even the interior designer. Sometimes interior designers bring on the projects to us that we get along well with, and they'll bring the project to us, and we build a great team.
So hold on, I got to pick this apart, because when you mentioned you're doing furnishings too, I mean, anyone that's from a design, I mean, that's a full business in itself, right? And now you're essentially running four. You got furniture, design, architecture, and building. So you got 4 heads there that you're trying to work through. Walk us through the relationship on the furniture side. I mean, in-house, the comfortability, the relationship with vendors, the freight, the shipping, the stock. Yeah. Like there's a lot that goes into furniture that's uncommon, that probably most architects and builders aren't working with.
Yeah. So and to add some more complexity too, we have the millwork shop too. But as far as the furniture and interior design, the one thing I would say is that, because we're doing construction, we already have that procurement system kind of set up. Mm-hmm. So I would say maybe the one difference in just an architecture firm is, an architecture firm has got to learn this whole procurement process, whereas we already have that procurement process kind of going for us. But yeah, we have our, it's a new venture. We enjoy challenges, and I'm pretty involved. I like to go to a lot of trade shows and events, and being that we're so close to the city, I go to a lot of showrooms, so I have a lot of relationships that we build up. Not just myself, right? My team, and so we have the relationships, and the procurement, I think, is maybe one of the harder parts. But because of the construction procurement, we're able to. The construction procurement team really picks up a lot of that logistics and storage and warehousing and all that.
It's incredible. I mean, when you think about the procurement, I mean, it's, I look at it from our side as a builder. There's a lot that goes into it from, multiple projects that we have going and coordinating all the different suppliers. I mean, you look at tile alone, right? I think on tile, I mean, we have one home that I think we have 15 different vendors supplying tile, right? And so, yeah, on one
Wow.
project. That's not always common, but you're dealing with multiple manufacturers and dealers and, distributors. And so, from your perspective, and you mentioned you do your own millwork as well, why do your own millwork and cabinetry as if you don't have enough on your plate?
I guess I'm a control freak. Maybe I don't know. So I love millwork. I have to just say, like that one is just like my passion for millwork. I had an opportunity come to me, and I would say it really comes down to the control of the schedule, and really that's the big one for me is the schedule. We have a lot of work. Less work. The furniture. We don't do that much furniture
Yeah.
design, right? We work with a lot of interior designers, but the millwork was a big one for us. That was really delaying us and causing a lot of hiccups in our schedule. So when an opportunity came to me of one of our mill workers who decided to say, like this, I love millwork, but I don't love business. So I said, we could take care of that part for you. So that was uh, an awesome opportunity I couldn't take down. So I always wanted to have my own millwork shop. So honestly, that's been a pretty easy transition so far. Same thing. I got a great team that kind of helped transition the procurement part of it. And you got a great team that kind of works all well together. And our millwork shop foreman he's loving it because he doesn't have to deal with the business, the insurance, the rent, and all this anymore. And now he's just doing what he loves. So it's been great. And then from our perspective, when I say ours is in the construction, it's great because now we can properly look at our pipeline and look at our schedule. And that's been a big game changer for us because, we had to go out to a couple of different mill workers to try to keep up with our demand. And even then it was just, getting frustrated with some delays. So now we can control that scheduling. And that's been great for us so far.
Maybe walk me through the millwork. I mean, because there's, millwork's definition is different for everyone all over the country. I mean, from
Hmm.
cabinetry to beams to interior doors to trim, molding, crown, base. I mean, what's the limit of scopes that you're willing to perform, or what is the total kind of envelope that you're willing to do
Yeah.
from a millwork perspective?
Yeah, it's a great point. So for us, millwork, and not that we don't call it millwork, but what we would do as far as our millwork shop is we'll do kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, wine units, wine rooms, built-in bookcases. But we're really not doing doors, interior doors. Um, we contemplate maybe there was one historic project we were working on in Jersey City, and it was a beautiful front door. We were contemplating it. We decided to sub that out to a shop that focuses just on doors. But yeah, so for us, it's cabinets and built-ins, not interior doors. Fireplace mantles will do. Um, and anything complex that we can sometimes we'll even bring the guys onto the site and do it. But for the most part, they're busy in the shop working on cabinets and built-ins.
Do you find it challenging? I think a lot of people with the ebbs and flow of construction, right? The product variation that you have, durations can change depending on permitting and design, and so you have these ebbs and flows as a contractor. How difficult can it be to manage just the manpower in your mill workshop? Do you find them ever slowing down or having too much on their plate? And along that, to maybe control that, are you outsourcing that to other competitors or is it only in house?
So we haven't had to outsource it yet. But I would say honestly, because we're also doing work outside of our own shop, as outside of our own company too. So we do a lot of built-ins and cabinets for other homeowners, interior designers having their own little projects. Then we'll do that too. So our pipeline in millwork, believe it or not, is probably busier than our construction and architecture teams. So the millwork's been an easier projection for us because we're just upfront and honest with our clients. Like this is what the schedule looks like, and they're usually pretty good with it. And if not, I'm sorry, but this is what the schedule looks like, and I'm meaning this is what the schedule looks like for our outside clients, as we call it. When it's not one of our design build clients. So our design build clients get the top priority, and we make sure that fits in our schedule. And if it's outside person, we'll just explain to them like this is the earliest we can get this out. And yeah, we're just three men in the shop, three guys in the shop, so not too busy, nothing too, or excuse me, not too large, but enough for us to manage.
Going back to the design perspective, you mentioned that some clients will do the full turnkey, right? All the way through furniture. I mean, that's an option. They do partial. How often is there a percentage of clients that are doing the full, at least design build, construction and
Hmm.
design, or construction architecture, I should say?
So I would say a lot. I would say probably maybe more than 80%. I mean, the only time where we're not doing full blown design build is obviously when it's outside of our area, our radius, right? We do some work in the Hamptons, Connecticut, upstate New York. Obviously, that's going to be a design only job. But if it's a project that's viable for us to do construction, even if they don't sign up with us in the beginning, generally we build up that relationship and they've got this comfort level and trust that they're just like, you know what, we're going to go with you. So it's a really high win rate for the design build. Once we just build that relationship, it's kind of smooth sailing from there. We've built that trust, and that's to me what any project is about. Whether it's, I'm sure you agree as well. Like once you built that client relationship and trust, it's so much smoother sailing from there. So, and we don't push it, and that's why in the beginning we don't push the design build in the beginning. We'll say, look, like just hire us for preliminary design, and we'll see how this goes, and then we'll go from there. And then usually we like them, they like us, and then we'll further develop the what we call our phase two of design, and then also a pre-construction agreement as well.
So what does their pre-construction agreement look like? Is that separate from the design
Yeah,
agreement?
yeah. So we talked a little bit about this. So
Mhm.
I went back and forth on this. So when I first started my company a little over 8 years ago, I actually started doing pre-construction agreements, but I was having a lot of trouble with my clients signing it, agreeing to it. So, none of my competitors were doing it. And why should I have to pay this? If I can bid this out, people do this for free. So in the beginning, it was really hard. I was just getting turned down all the time. So I was like, you know what, forget this. So I eliminated the separate agreement, and I was raising my design fee to absorb my hours for all of the estimating. And then I got to a point recently where I was saying, I'm sometimes pricing myself higher than some of the designers. So but they're not offering this service. So I'm like, I need to go back and separate it. So I've kind of gone back and forth. So for a while, I was just increasing my design fees to absorb all of my estimating hours. And now we went back to a pre-construction agreement. So in the beginning, I'm giving a client two proposals, one for design and one for pre-construction. Um, so that's in our early two-phase process.
What's interesting about that, a lot of the design build firms I know are doing two separate agreements, right? That they have an
Yeah.
agreement for design and then they have a separate one for pre-con. I don't think I've ever really asked them, from an answer perspective, but do you have pushback from your clients? I know you built a reputation and you have the product portfolio now in your career where you can, essentially communicate that very clearly with the customer. Do you ever have pushback saying, well, Rosario, I'm already working with you on design. Why can't you just work through budgets? Why can't you just work through, that
All
schedule?
the time.
Like, why do I have to pay you a separate deposit, for, to engage with you?
Yeah, I definitely get that sometimes. And it's just it's about educating clients, right? Like and I tell clients too all the time, like to me, like the reason why I have separate agreements is for insurance purposes, right? Like my insurance doesn't like design build, so my architecture insurance is one and my construction insurance is separate. And usually when I say that, clients say, oh, okay, so I'm getting a better price by separate agreement. So I usually gets a lot of my clients, and that's really the reality of it. But yeah, clients definitely. Some of my clients don't understand it, but at the end of the day, I think for the majority of our clients appreciate it and get it.
Well, I know that it can be challenging because you mentioned this early on. Schedule is a big reason why you decided to kind of incorporate all these entities. I've noticed from my perspective that from a builder, you can be on an island based on how busy the designer is, how busy the architect is, how quickly they can move through that pre-construction phase and get to the next phase, next to the next step, so that we can price and budget accordingly. And unfortunately, we've had projects where, they go to, these certain design firms, call them design and architecture, and for whatever, they take a long time and the clients get worn out. And so you lose those opportunities. How do you feel that's affected you, where you can streamline this? Maybe from an average design, or from one of your competitors, if they're designing a home, what does it take for them to design and they get to build, as opposed to you that now has a head start because you're doing the full process internally?
Yeah, so I generally tell our clients that, in that regard, they're saving generally around 2 to 3 months if they go with us, because from my experience, even before having my own firm, when I worked for just, an architecture firm, you know, to deliver a set of plans to a contractor, or if you're bidding out to three contractors, it takes time to wrap your head around these plans and understand the design intent. The design intent is one thing, and then the actual drawings are another thing. Um, and at least in New Jersey as well. In New Jersey, you have to award a contractor, and then the contractor has to submit the permit to the town. Whereas in New York City, for example, the architect submits for the permitting. So you have to price it out, get the price, approve that price in that construction contract, and then you submit for permit. So if they're going with us for design build, I'm pricing it out the whole time. So as soon as I finish our construction documents, I'm submitting the price to them, and I can say, okay, I'm ready to submit for permit. Do you want to go with us, or do you want to bid this out, or do you want to talk to somebody else? So that's, I would say generally it's around 2 to 3 months, I say, in time savings. And I tell people, look, I'm not going to be less expensive, but time is money. So it is less expensive, but I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be less expensive on the architecture or the construction side, but the time is money is definitely true in our system, I would say.
And from a budget perspective, I know that there can still be challenges despite having the team together, right? You have design, you have architect, you have build. They're working together, they're going through schematics, but there's still, I don't want to say idle time. There's still time where each party is not all together, right, through that design process. And so sometimes as
Yeah.
certain decisions are made in front of the client, things can go up and down and leverage. How do you feel the competitive advantages from a budget, being that you're engaged, that internal operations included in all those different phases and steps, and most importantly, selections?
So from a budget perspective, you're
Yeah,
saying?
I'm saying for
Okay. Yeah.
budget, because like what happens is we may have a budget with the architect and designer. We've laid it out. We've gone through it. They don't do it for a living, right? In
Yeah.
fairness to them, and so you can only have so many price checks throughout that pre-com period,
Hmm.
and that's why, despite that, we'll still send out for bid, and of course, some things come back higher. There's some things maybe even us as builders didn't anticipate being that expensive, and they do, and then they have a little bit of sticker shock, and then you're working with clients, for value engineering and to figure out next steps. How much do you avoid that value engineering phase, or I should say, just being more coordinated in pricing, being that you're doing the design?
So I would say our biggest challenge in that regard is, I think at times, especially when my estimating is included in my design fee as a flat fee, clients just get a little too comfortable saying, well, what if we do this? And can you give us a price of this option? Can you do a price for this option? That's where it gets really frustrating for our team. It's like, all right, like, how many iterations are we going to do here? It's like, what's the budget? Like, a lot of clients say they have a budget, and then our clients or the budget increases somewhere out of nowhere. It's like, wait, was this really the budget all along? Because we're trying to design to your budget, and now you're saying, well, we want to add this, how much is this, and we want to add this, and how much is that, and we want to add this. And it's like, all right, how many iterations of a budget are we going to do here? Can you just please tell us the real budget here? So that's one of our biggest challenges, is our clients get really comfortable, like, with us just pumping out new estimates, and that gets a little tiring, constantly estimating off of multiple design schemes. So that's something we're trying to manage, to be honest, is like getting our clients to give us their true budget. I could tell you, like, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of 3 projects right now where the budget started here, and now they're asking for all these upgraded options, and let's go bigger with the addition. Well, wait a second, but I'm telling you, we're already at the budget. And like, well, I want to see where that's going to price at. I'm like, all right. So I'll just say, it's we lose time on the estimates. I just feel like we're constantly value engineering our projects all the time.
So you don't need the practice in bidding.
What? No, definitely not. No, no, I've done too many Excel spreadsheets.
So that's interesting with
Yeah.
the client with the client budget. Are a lot of your clients doing lump sum or like a GMP, or a lot of them asking for cost plus in your market?
Most are asking for cost plus. No, nobody's asked for us for a GMP. And thankfully, knock on wood, nobody's asked for a GMP. Um, so that's good. But once in a while, I guess when people want to bid it out, they're asking for a fixed price. And
Hmm.
the interesting thing about this is most of my market, when they say they want to bid it out, a lot of times they want to bid it out before the design is fully completed. And that's kind of where it gets frustrating because I'm saying,
Hmm.
when you're bidding it out, you're really bidding 50% of the job out. So we have a lot more design work to do here. So um, that's why we prefer the cost plus, because we just say like, all right, let's bid that plus part. Let's bid that. Let's negotiate rather that markup fee, and then let's just manage your budget. That's what we prefer. But um, when we're bidding it out, I don't. It's never 100% complete drawings in my market, at least.
Yeah, and
Which I know you talk about a lot, right? I feel like
yeah,
for you, well, you're involved in the pre-construction, so
yeah,
right,
we're
a lot of your
involved, but
jobs.
still, yeah. But the problem is, it doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is, if you're sending out preliminarily to, that you don't have enough detail and it's going out too early, you're not going to get accurate numbers. You're going to get what we call WAG, right? A wild day guess. And so,
Yeah,
um,
and the subs get frustrated, right,
they do
when you
get
price it
frustrated
multiple times. Yeah,
because, like you said, they don't need the practice or exercise.
yeah,
And then the problem is, I always tell my clients too, like, you're going to get your best and final best sharpened pencil number if it goes out at one time as
yeah.
opposed to multiple
Once,
times.
yeah,
Because what I found too in my career is that the more that I send something out for bid, especially the same project, subs get exhausted. They see this coming through, and at the end of the day, they're like, "Look, I already gave a price. Here it is." And so you don't see a lot of movement, even if there's been drastic deductions in design or architecture. The needle doesn't move a whole lot because they've already spent time and effort, and they're really not that interested in going back and giving back money, to the client instead of being real competitive the first time had you planned it right up front.
yeah. The one part I would say, kind of on another topic a little bit, is another reason why I really enjoy the design build is that my design team gets a little more firsthand experience on really what the field is looking for. We have a lot of team meetings on how to make our drawings better for the field team and for our subcontractors. So the one thing I'll say is that when we do go out to price, our subcontractors do say they really, really appreciate our drawings because every project, our template is getting better and better. Where, if there's a missing scope or something, that's now going into the lessons learned bucket, and then that's going to get into our new template going forward. So every project, our drawings are getting better and better so that the subcontractors have less and less questions for us. So when we are pricing, you know electrical, plumbing, especially those things that you can quantify, we have our kind of system all set up where it's like, all right, here's the schedule, like fill this in. That's kind of, at least for our electricians and plumbers, a lot of things that we can quantify, and everything down from how many, are we doing branch valves in the bathroom. So I get excited about this stuff, but like we've created some pretty good systems and efficiencies for us for pricing.
Interesting. So with going back to that point that you just made, as you're working through this with the clients, and you're looking at this entire process and looking at that communication, how has that excelled you as far as reputation, work, upcoming projects, business development, by knowing that you're a one-stop shop?
I definitely think it's helped. It's helped, but I would say at the same time, there's a certain market that maybe just doesn't want that, and that's fine, right? But the nice thing is we've gotten to the point now where people know who we are and know what to expect just from referrals. You built my friend's house. I want you to build our house. I heard it was a nice, smooth transition. It was a fun process. So that's been great. And honestly, it's been recent. I would say it's only been maybe like 2 years. We've kind of getting to that point where clients, through their friends, of a referral, like, all right, I get it. I get this process. It's a very different project when a client says, I've never worked with an architect or builder before versus a client says I've worked with an architect and builder before, or you built my friend's house and they explained to me how great the design build option is with you. So um, all different types of clients, but I would say a lot of the clients are coming to us now saying, I really, really like this one-stop shop. I really like that I can kind of hold you accountable for design and the budget. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's great, but at the same time, it's like a lot of responsibility, to design something beautiful, but then also make their budget, because there's no finger pointing. I can't say, oh, it's like I told that person, it's like it's all on us. So for the design and the budget. So
So here's the real question I've been waiting to ask you, Rosario, is that I think, okay, from my aspect, I think anyone that's a builder, and I always tease everyone, if you want to be a contractor, you're a glutton for punishment, right? Like there's a lot of stress in the building enterprise. And even if you have great plans, even if you have a great design, even if the budget's on track and everything's good, at the end of the day, you have so many factors in hands, right? You have the telephone game between, hey, I'm bidding with the estimator, I'm contracting with the owner, but the installers who come out, do they even know what was agreed to for their scope and the contract and the bid? And so you're dealing with these complexities, you're dealing with elements, natural elements. So as a builder, I find this incredibly complicated with all the risk associated to go build a project. Now, you add to it that you're can do furniture and you can do design and you're doing architecture in most cases. Do any one of these four divisions bring you the most heartburn, headache, stress?
um, if I had to pick one, definitely the construction for sure, right? Because in construction, I feel like in construction you have the least amount of control, at least for my system, right? I can't, at the end of the day, I can't control whether my plumber is sick and doesn't decide to show up, right? And that's, I think, the frustrating part. Or like the van broke down, like that one. It's like, all right, come on, we're in 2024. How many vans break down? But I would say that's the most frustrating part is managing the client frustrations of why isn't the tile guy here today, why isn't the plumber here today, and like that gets frustrating. The micromanagement sometimes on a project schedule, especially when it comes down to the finished stages. Design, they're still happy, right? I'm sure I love that roller coaster kind of
Hmm.
chart that we've all seen, right? There's all different phases, but by far it gets stressful. Actually, in design, I'll say in New York City, I think we talked about this too. Like permitting for you seems really time consuming, but for us in New Jersey, it's pretty straightforward. But in New York City, going through Landmark and just going through DOB, and before that, honestly, just going through, most of our projects in the city are co-ops or condo boards, and you have to get approval from them first. They send your plans out to an outside architect and engineer to review it, and that is just so time consuming, and that can be really stressful. No matter how much you try to manage the client's expectations, they just don't understand why is this taking 6 months to get approval. Um, that's really stressful on the architecture side. But definitely, if I had to pick the construction, by far. Is that
I,
what you were expecting? Is that?
yeah, I kind of assumed that'd be your answer. How does millwork play? What about millwork as opposed to design and architecture?
Um, so our millwork for us, we don't finish in a shop. At least we don't. We try not to finish in a shop. So I feel like we had more stress when we would had the cabinets get delivered pre-finished, and it's like, oh, that's not right, and it's like, oh, well, now what do we do here? It's like a finished cabinet, right? So like, I recently we started just saying we like this architecturally or design. We like it better to just spray everything, all the woodwork in the rooms, the same finish, and so we prefer to finish on site. So that's honestly helped us alleviate. We can play with the curveballs a little bit more. If there's a surprise, there's some flexibility, right? We can take the cabinet out; it's not finished. We can patch it or do whatever we have to do, make the modifications. Millwork is not that bad. And to be honest, I have more of a day-to-day operations person who's managing the millwork, so I get to do the fun part. Be involved in a design, and someone else kind of manages more of that operations of the day-to-day and the cabinetry. So that's helpful.
Now, going back to the contracting side, I know it can be complicated. You and I talked on this a little bit, but when you look at like general conditions, you know, uh, why are those important? As you're looking at the general conditions of a project.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, similar projects, right? I think, or you're looking on another scale, but at the end of the day, you're working on architect design driven homes, right? And for us, nothing is, is the same. And to me, I think general conditions is the key to successful project, a custom project, right? I get a lot of times people say, I want to use this spec builder. Let's say if it's, or even outside of our market, and they say, I want this spec builder to build my house. And nothing wrong with spec builder, but I would say like that's a very different build. Someone who's building a spec house day in and day out. A lot of spec builders around here are smaller shops, and they're not necessarily don't have a general conditions, and there's nobody really reviewing the plans, bidding it out, scoping it out, and being on site full time. So in our designs, they're very complex, and to manage and build a complex project requires a certain level of general conditions. And for us, general conditions, what does that mean? That means basically I break it down to three people: our construction project manager, our project coordinator, and our site superintendent. Our project manager is looking at the project minimum 2 months out, pricing the next trades for 2 months out, looking at the schedule 2 months out. The project coordinator is working on materials, long lead item with the project manager, making sure everything's getting delivered when it's supposed to be delivered. And I don't know if I have 15 tile vendors, but we have some projects where there's a lot of different tile vendors, lighting vendors, and this delay and this. So that's a more than a full-time job for a project coordinator to just manage all of that, all those deliveries. And then the site superintendent, he's more of looking at the project from a 2 week out. So, our site superintendent is doing a 2 week look ahead, whereas our project manager is doing like a 2 month look ahead. So our site superintendent he's asking all the nitty gritty questions of our drawings, for quality control. So, on an architect designed home, I think that's really, really important. And I think that's the big difference between us and, let's say, a lot of our competitors is a lot of times, even when we're bidding a project out, we work with a lot of contractors, like, what is general conditions? And I've always said, like, if I'm ever going to write a book, I'm going to write a book called General Conditions in High-End Residential Construction, like, because it's so critical. Even when I worked for other architects before I started my company, once in a while, we would manage the bidding and say, these are three reputable contractors, and they have the right general conditions. And then once in a while, you had a client who would say, this guy's a great price, no general conditions. And it always turned out to be a really, really stressful project, and things were getting lost, and there was just no manpower there to properly build it right. So yeah, it's super critical, general conditions.
Where do you feel your education came so quickly on general conditions? The reason I bring it up is that most of us is trial by error, right? You've lost enough money, you didn't understand how to bid a project properly. I mean, there's a huge learning curve when it comes to construction. What accelerated that knowledge? I mean, is it all just hard knock learning experience through GCs, or did you have a network there to kind of help you mentor?
So I've been fortunate where I've before I started my company, I worked for some really high end architects working on some really, really spectacular projects. And the one firm I worked for, I was taught about general conditions there and how all the general contractors had the right general conditions. And it was a conversation during the pre-construction or the bidding phase. We would talk about pre-construction in meetings with our contractors, and I was a part of those meetings. So that was when I was just working for architects. And then I went to NYU for construction project management, and I met a professor there who got me a job, working for a construction management company. So before I knew I wanted to get into design build, I was working for an architect, and this professor got me a job working in the city for an owner's rep and a construction management company. We did owner's representation and we did construction management, and that's really where from a construction management perspective, where I really understood and learned what general conditions was. I was working on projects that were 90 million, over $100 million, and the complexity to understand what MEP, site superintendent, general superintendent, and all of these monthly general conditions bills. That's where I learned that. The funny thing is that I learned this right being a project manager, building a ground up in Brooklyn, with a whole general conditions team, and then to starting my own company, and it kind of like starting all over again, where it's like, all right, So I would go into a project with general conditions, and I was losing projects all the time, losing bids. It was like, well, nobody even has general conditions. What is this line item? I'm just like, all right, so I guess people don't do this here in New Jersey. And then so like I tried eliminating it, and then I definitely back to like hard knocks. It's like I knew it, and then I got to a point where like I had to eliminate it and try to adapt and learn how my competitors are doing it. I'm just like I don't get it. And but then I got to a point where I feel like the market started getting better for me, where I started getting better clientele who appreciated and valued it and respected it, and so now we're at the point where most of our clients, and still to some degree, we're still teaching our clients what that is and how important it is to a project. Um, but it's a lot easier now. So all of our projects have general conditions now. Definitely learn a lesson. I'm not trying to compete with the guy who doesn't have general conditions.
Yeah, it's a good point because that general condition line can separate you, and it's hard. But to your point, I mean, you I think you need to give us a little history of this experience because I didn't realize. I mean, you had worked for a big architecture firm, then you went back to NYU. Did you do architecture school before us? I mean, kind of walk us through that educational journey before you started your company.
Um, yeah. See, how far back do I go? So,
You're too young to go back that far.
I look younger than I am. Trust me. um, so, where do I start? Let's see. So I started working in. I went to school in South Florida. Grew up, born and raised in New Jersey, and then doing construction in summers. And then I went to school in Florida, got a job working for an architecture firm doing high end new builds, working on some amazing houses, celebrity homes. Very very well known CEOs and some really amazing projects. So that was really fun. I worked down there for 7 years in the Palm Beach area. And then when I came back up, actually I worked for a good friend of mine who's actually one of my mentors. He was an architect and got to work on a 60-acre family estate. And that was like a dream project of mine because it was during 2008. Nobody had a job, and I had this job. It was a 2-year project. We were just me and two other architects designing this house, and we got to work really closely with the construction management team. So there's a full blown, like it was built like a commercial job. There was multiple trailers for construction managers and site crew. So I saw the management part of construction on that build. So that was kind of another experience in the general conditions watching that build. So I worked there for a little bit, building designing, excuse me, that 60-acre estate. Then I worked for another firm that is in a very affluent area of New Jersey, and really, really taught me the more professional, more. We learned design there too. I really learned how to put together a really good set of construction documents and how important, because that firm was all about bidding. They weren't about negotiating; they were all about bidding. So our drawings were all about the notes. I felt like an attorney. Like when I worked at that firm, everything was just like CYA notes. Like it was all over the place. But it was like, bid it, include the bid this, include bidding this, include bid. So, but it was a great experience from a contract document standpoint. But yeah, and then, like I said, I always wanted to get back into construction. So I did a certificate program at NYU, which is great. I met so many great professors there, and I learned so much in that program from everything of just more professional construction at another level. And I think I forgot, I did it like at night and weekends. I want to say it was maybe a year and a half for me. And yes, from there I did a big switch. They say I switched over to the dark side, as some people say, right? So from architecture to construction. The two partners of the firm, they were actually architects too, and they said, "Welcome to the dark side. You sure you want to come here?" And they were great. They taught me a lot, and they used to joke about me saying, you architects are a little too loosey goosey. I'm going to teach you construction. I'm going to teach you how really it's built, and they were really fun. They were great. They taught me so much about how to really manage a project. That I give so much of my credit to where I am now for working for that owner's rep and construction management company.
That's amazing. And then here you are now. I mean, what made you decide, hey, I'm ready to start RS Mannino?
So I knew I always wanted to start a company, a design build company. So my first job was a design only job, and it's actually a pretty funny story. So, most of my work prior to starting my own company was working on really, really high end projects. And, starting out, I wanted to just take whatever I could. So a friend of mine said he's going to flip a couple of houses a year. He's like, I'm going to flip 5 houses a year. Do you want to be my architect? I said, yeah, sure. I'm definitely interested. So I'm like, this might be my opportunity to get my foot in the door here. So I just finished getting my license. And so the first job we designed, they hired, because again, it's a flipper, they're not looking at creme de la creme, say for GCs. So they find this general contractor, if you want to call them that. And we finished the job. We're almost done with the job. And there's a telephone pole in the middle of the driveway. And like this whole time he's building this project, you never realize that there's a telephone pole in the middle of the driveway. So you never call the utility company to relocate this power line. It's right in the middle of the driveway. So there was, I can't remember how it was we pulled some strings calling the local utility company, say like, look, we got to sell this house. We're ready to sell it, but we can't sell it because a telephone pole like literally in the driveway. So it took at least over a month, and my client was furious. And I said to him, well, actually, no, he said, you know what? We're not going to use him on the next job. I was like, okay. So I said, can I build the next one? And he's like, absolutely. Like, it was easy for me because like after that, they were just like, like you can do, you got this. So ironically, my project architect at the time is like, I want to learn construction. I want to do that side. So I was like, all right. So then he was my first project manager in construction. And yeah, it was just like a 2-man show. That was rough back then. 2 men, designing and building, but that didn't last long. Realized quick we had to grow this team quickly because that was really, really tough for me to try to manage, an office design and construction on the field. Like to me, that was definitely the hard knocks where I learned hard knocks. Like there's not a lot of books where you can read on
Yeah.
design build. That's what was really hard for me, is like learning the operation side of like, how do I still, manage my clients and design and do the design work and also, control the job site. And I just realized I had to scale properly and build a great team. So.
What do you consider your design philosophy?
Our So my design philosophy is authentic. So authentic, traditional design. So when we are authentic, to me, is natural materials. I think natural materials weather so beautiful. There's a lot of materials and new products out there that some are great, but for the most part, it's very hard, and they're always trying to mimic a natural material. And at the end of the day, like it's not going to be the same. Natural materials will always weather and patina over time. So I'm big on authentic materials. I'm really big on starting off with a historical research or vernacular, research of the local surrounding. I like to obviously clients are my biggest muse, right? Like my clients are my biggest inspiration and really what inspires them. I always say I'm not an egotistic architect. It's not about me. It's about my clients. It's about the site, the landscape. But I'm traditionally trained. I was taught classical architecture, traditional architecture, and from that I really learned like the right scales and proportions that have been mastered for generations, right? Going back to the Renaissance. And right, I love Andrea Palladio is one of my favorite architects, right? He's regarded as the most influential architect of all time. Um, Little
Why
fun
is that?
fact.
Yeah, why is that?
So, so he wrote a book called The Four Books of Architecture. So he went to Rome and studied all the Roman antiquity architecture. And he took that, wrote a book called The Four Books of Architecture. And during the Renaissance, all of the wealthy people of Venice wanted a country house, and they would hire him to design their country homes. So, and in his Four Books of Architecture are some of his homes as well. And so after the Renaissance, the English took that book and they brought that over and brought that architecture over to them. And actually, even Thomas Jefferson, when he traveled to Europe, someone, I don't remember who, said, this is, you're going back to America, take this book with you. It's The Four Books of Architecture by Andrea Palladio. This is the Bible of architecture. And he took that book and he studied it. And when he came back, he designed Monticello for himself. And everything that he's designed is based off of Andrea Palladio's book. And from him, he really brought that book across all of America and all the colonial architecture pretty much, not gonna say all, but is heavily influenced by his book. So, it's not something I've said, but many, many authors say like he is the most influential architect of all time. So he's really, really inspired me for his balance in architecture, his symmetry, his proportions are just, you just look at it, and took me some time to study it, but I look at it, it just makes sense and it just feels right. Right? It took me many years to learn to like look at scale and proportion and just know when it's right and when it's not. And sometimes it's a little bit harder to say why, but it's like you could look at something, it just doesn't feel right. Well, Andrea Palladio really mastered scale and proportion. So yeah, he's heavily influential in my design.
So with that, having a good understanding of, those boundaries, if you will, and, timeless architecture, what styles do you see yourself, because I think being design builds pretty unique. I mean, in fairness, I think right, wrong, and different, some firms that are full turnkey can get designated as, hey, they're a certain style, right? And
Yeah.
they're a certain finish,
Yeah.
how have you worked through maybe that, um, classification, and, to be able to work on so many unique projects?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge, I would say, especially I feel like in our market here, at least, everybody wants that traditional colonial home. And we definitely kind of get pigeonholed into that. So we're always trying to, when we have a client questionnaire that we ask our clients, and we have a lot of images in it, right? Some will be, all right, here's a symmetrical house, here's an asymmetrical house. Which one do you like better? Here's an English Tudor, and here's, a Georgian, and we start with this questionnaire, and then we start to ask some questions, and I just feel like it always just gravitates towards like that white colonial. Um, but so, it's, I don't know if it's like us, but it's just like our market, but it's definitely is a challenge for sure. People kind of definitely try to treat you as you're that architect. And it's funny, it's like we actually have a project that's very different, and we're so proud of it and so excited about it. And of course the client wanted an NDA, so we couldn't even like photograph or release it. So it's like one of those projects we're so proud of, we want to show it, and we really can't. So it's which actually I was just looking into this recently. I was talking to my design forum, but I'm considering building a lookbook. I have to talk to my client if they're okay with that. So I can at least are like, look, we can do this too, right? Because I can't put it on my website, can't put it anywhere. But maybe if I build this like, PDF that I only share in a meeting or something, I could show people other things that we've done. Um, but yeah, it's definitely harder. I definitely feel that for sure. I don't know if it's because we're design build or what, but I feel like all design teams, architects have a little bit of that struggle. Once you do one, you kind of get treated as you're that guy. You're the one that does stone houses. You're the one that does French stone. So we definitely get a little bit of that, and it's definitely something we try to manage for sure.
So how did you get involved
Yeah.
with the DLN network?
Yeah. Um, so I did a project in the city, and the interior designer was a member, and we're just asking her about the DLN, and she tell me about Forum. I think I tell you I used to belong to a different organization, similar but not design oriented. It was just business oriented, and which was great for growth for me. But when I heard about the DLN and how it's geared towards architects, designers, and high end contractors, I was like, this is something I want to be part of, because it's a forum where you gather with like minded people in non competing markets, and you get to talk shop and really just try to help each other improve. I was like, this when I heard that, I was like, pretty simple. Like, I'm all in. So, and then the great part too is there's also a nonprofit part of the organization as well, the DLF Design Leadership Foundation, which is great, which I'm actually really excited to be a part of too, where we get to mentor young underprivileged kids who want to get into architecture school, who maybe don't have the same financial means as other people. So that's really, really great, and I'm really excited to be a part of that as well. So yeah, DLN is great. I'm really enjoying that a lot. I highly recommend that. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
what keeps you up at night now?
Uh, every week is something different. um, some weeks honestly might be like a design challenge that honestly keeps me up. Like I'll literally like, in the middle of my sleep, it's like, oh, like I got, this is a great idea. I got to do this tomorrow. And then the worst is when you wake up, you're like, gosh, what was that idea again? So sometimes it's a design issue, and other times it's a scheduling issue in construction. But if I like pick something just in general, it's always like how to improve the system. I would say, being design build, it's a little bit more complex. trying to improve the system some more. And that's, why I love to chat about you with. So, but yeah, I would say that's something that keeps me up at night is how to improve the system, maybe even more.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
I think it's impressive because trying to improve the system, like there's so much to it. There's so much. So it's definitely keeps you up at night thinking of all the. I know for me, it's like going through all the lists and everything. Like there's just a lot to it. But
Yeah.
best advice you've been given.
As cliche as it sounds, I would say, be true to yourself. And I would say more on the construction side, actually. When I was working in a city, someone said, don't be greedy and make sure you always speak on your client's behalf, right? So like as a general contractor, especially sometimes when you're, bidding a job, you're kind of like almost in a defensive manner, or in a I'm speaking for me, and then you have yourself, and you just always speak on your client's best behalf. And that's easier, I think, maybe as an architect, but sometimes in a design build, and when I'm in a construction contract, not to say that I do speak like that, but it's just something to just always remember to just it's something I teach all my staff is make sure you're always saying, it's we're always on the client side, we're always on your side, we always, trying to make this better for yourself. So I would say, don't be greedy, and speak on your client's behalf at all times. Always think about what's in the best interest for your client. Pretty simple, but just keep that in mind. And then, more for design to me is just like what staying authentic is pretty simple for me.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to hear yours. That's a great question. What's your best?
There's actually a few. I think there's a lot of been getting over the years, but one thing I'll say is that everything's better because you were there, right? Is something that the mentor said, and so I think that has a lot of impact in a lot of ways. Whether it's like your business, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers, whether it's your children, your family. I mean, there's just a lot of things that essentially like push a limit and try to do better and better, right? And so
Mhm.
I could probably take that a lot of directions because I think there's a lot of good advice. Fortunately, I've been around a lot of successful people that give me good advice over the years, and
Mhm.
ideally try to be a sponge and take in as much as you can.
Yeah, that's definitely one for sure. Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah.
where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, at RS Mannino, RSMANNINO. And our cabinetry is at Mannino Cab, MANNINOCAB.
It's amazing. Well, Rosario, for those listening, you need to go follow him and see what he's doing. And your firm, you guys do some amazing work. I know you're working in a very signature market here in the U.S. And so it's been a pleasure to get to know you and appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. This is fun, and looking forward to round two soon of golf. I got to work on my driver. Stay away from that highway.
Yeah, highway's not good.
It's
There
going
was
well.
there was a highway going by, and Rosario may or may not have had one leak out that way.
I
Awesome.
get a little nervous the next time.
All right, we'll see you.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Take care.
If you get value from the show,
That's
please
awesome.
support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.